everyone, Eric here from Healing Relationship. This is our weekly recorded session. Every week I meet with a special guest and we talk about relationship, healing and self-empowerment. I believe that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. Today I'm very glad to have as my guest Dr. Karin Anderson Abrell. Thank you for accepting my invitation, Karin.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. I met Karin through Instagram and I was very intrigued by her book, Single is the New Black. And when I started to check her content, it was really powerful and uplifting, and whether she talks about dating or marriage. So I thought you would be a great guest for my show. So thank you for being here.
Oh, no, thank you for the kind words.
So let me start by introducing you, okay? So Dr. Karin Anderson Abrell is a psychologist, author, podcast host, and musician. Her book, Single is the New Black, Don't Wear White Till It's Right, is a word of empowerment to singles, encouraging them to stay strong amidst single shaming, live life on their own terms, and never ever settle for anything less than an extraordinary relationship. A former professor, Dr. Karin now hosts Love and Life, a podcast providing lively and informative discussions grounded in psych research to help us thrive in all realms of love and life. Did I miss anything, Karin?
You got it.
Okay, great. That's a beautiful work that you do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I enjoy it.
So I'm very curious to know, how did you get to do what you do? What's your story?
Yeah, my story is, I don't know that anyone, of course, in our generation, 20 years ago, we didn't know that we would be podcast hosts or be the host of a program like yours that's on YouTube, because those technologies did not exist. So I was a professor, and initially I wanted to be a psychologist, like a therapist. And so I was a therapist for a couple of years, had my master's in clinical psych, which is how to be a therapist, basically. Worked with kids in the inner city of Chicago in foster care. After several years doing that, I went back to get the PhD so that I could be a professor. I knew that I wanted to be in academia, and I did that for 10 years. And 5 years at an undergrad institution again in Chicago, working again in the inner city, and then 5 years as a professor to people who wanted to become therapists themselves. So then I was teaching the therapeutic tools and techniques. And during that time, I myself was out in the dating scene, and as I got into my 30s and then my early 40s, and I was still not married, there were a lot of people who had some explanations as to why I wasn't married. Maybe I was too picky, or I was getting a doctorate, so maybe now I was intimidating men. And all these explanations seemed to fall flat to me, because I thought, I'm doing the best I can, being the best version of me, and I don't think there's anything tragically or fundamentally flawed in my character or my personality that's keeping me from getting married. But so many of the other self-help books, and I know that the authors are very well-intentioned, but oftentimes they would say things like, well, you need to do this, 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 and this, and then true love will find you. And because I didn't hear a message that was voicing that perspective, I thought, well, you're a psychologist, you better write the book. So I did. Many things that singles are doing right, like staying true to themselves and not settling and only wanting something extraordinary, and looking within, as you talk about, looking within to make sure that their relationship with themselves is as strong as possible, because the relationship they'll have with anyone else, whether romantic or otherwise, will be so much more powerful if their relationship with the self is powerful. So then I wrote the book, and as we do when we write a book, we want to let people know about it. So I started getting very active on social media, especially on Instagram, and here we are to this present day.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you. So what's an extraordinary relationship? I'm curious to know your take on that.
Well, for me, it's where you are resonating with your authentic self. So you've done your own work, and you continue to do your own work, because our journey in this life involves the self-discovery day to day. But to me, an extraordinary relationship is one that feels very easy. And that goes against many of the common messages that the old ball and chain and relationships are hard work. And I actually devoted a podcast episode to the notion that I think it's a myth. I think when you're with the right person, it's very fluid. It's very easy because you have core values that are similar. The way that you want to do life is similar. So there's not all that much tension. There's not all that much to fight about. And you mentioned I'm a musician. So for my second marriage, wedding anniversary, I wrote a song for my husband called Breathing, because he would say to people, and he'd been married before, so he had the perspective of a marriage that was hard and then a marriage to me that was easy. And he used to tell people, he'd say, you know, being with Karin is so easy. It's like breathing. And that seems almost too perfect and too fairy tale, but that's what I'm out here trying to encourage people to look for, something that's just that special, because we know that we can be okay on our own. And I got to the point, you know, I called off a wedding. That's another part of my story. When I was 34, I called off a wedding 2 months before the wedding date, because I realized that if the relationship wasn't going to be exceptional, I was good single. So I was waiting for something really special.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I hear you saying that a relationship to be also extraordinary, it needs a foundation of having core values that are very strong and similar to both of the people. And I think that's really important to mention that, because most of the people, I think, they get into relationship, they get attracted, they have, you know, sex attraction or whatever, but then they just assume that everything will follow, or we unfold the way they expect that. But I think it's really a great reminder to say that if you don't have the same value and if you don't go into the same direction in life, there's going to be some friction, right?
Oh, for sure. And it's something you want both. I don't want someone to think, okay, well, Karin said, just go find someone who's got the same values and forget about the butterflies and the chemistry. You want that, but you want the values too, because it just makes life and living together and all the decisions that a couple makes as they continue throughout life, past the honeymoon phase, past the first couple of years, it makes it so much easier when you really are aligned.
Yeah, being aligned. But tell me one thing. I'm sure sometimes you get upset and you get triggered with your husband.
Get triggered?
Yes. Do you?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, life throws curveballs at us, right? Here's an example of something that I had to, So when I get upset, I consider myself that I'm one of those people who can take a lot, but then if I get mad, boom, I can go from just fine to
Okay.
And when my husband would say, calm down, or it's not that big a deal, well, that would just fire me up even more, because I'd think, don't tell me to calm down. I have every reason to feel this passionate about this. I have every reason to feel this angry. So he's learned that when I get like that, there may be another way to come and approach me that will be a way that I can receive. What he's trying to do is soothe me. And I was not soothed. I was triggered, as you said, when he was trying to tell me to calm down. So those are the kinds of things you learn. But one thing that's very helpful, and couples need to be reminded of this, even though we know it's true and they know it's true, is that you're on the same team. And my husband and I try very hard to remember that even when he comes at me in a way that I think, what? To remember, I believe that he's got my best interests in mind. I believe that he's coming at me, even in a way that I'm not receiving very well, but his intention is a good one. And when we keep that first and foremost, it helps us kind of diffuse some of that intensity of the interaction.
I really appreciate what you just said about the intention. Well, we have another guest here.
Sorry.
That's okay. We love dogs. That's okay. No worries. Yeah, that's very important what you just said about the intention and the space that we can create, and having the best intention, that it's not me against my partner or my partner against me, even if we get triggered, even if we get upset. But it's like a real team, like, let's try to figure this out and let's try to find solution. And one thing that I learned in my own relationship, I've been married 3 times, so I've learned a lot about that, is whenever there are few different perspectives. When you have your own point of view and your partner has their own point of view. One way to get out of that is to find a third perspective, to find a third option that will make us both feel like safe and seen and validated in our experience. What's your take on that?
I love that. The third option, or a mediator, or another vantage point can often be so helpful. Of course, as a psychologist and former therapist, I love a therapy context for that, to provide, the he said, the she said, and then, well, wait, let me see if there's maybe more common ground here than you realize. Or sometimes it's not easy to see a situation from your partner's point of view. And so that's helpful too. Is that the kind of thing you're referring to, or even outside of the therapeutic realm, perhaps?
Both of them, yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So I coach couples, and most of the time when couples come to me, it's almost like, I don't want to say too late, but it's almost like they're really in the midst of chaos, blaming each other, having resentment and anger. So what would you recommend, or what's your advice on that for those couples who are at the point where they reach a limit and they don't know what to do to start to get back to the source and to start to get back to a space where they can feel safe and heard?
Yeah, I think that's so tough. I really admire what you do, because counseling or coaching couples is not easy. And sometimes they're coming after years and years of resentment has built up, and years of hurt and pain, and they've built the walls so thick between each other. So I admire what you do. I'm sure you do what I learned in my marital counseling classes, is you try to bring them back to what first excited them about their partner, what first drew you to each other, to see if you can kind of peel away all the pain that has built up. It's hard. And also, though, to be honest, Eric, sometimes I worry that couples got together for the wrong reasons in the first place, which is why kind of on my end, I'm trying to help people before they make that commitment. And having almost married the wrong person myself, I've had that experience myself where I can see all these reasons that we sometimes step into the wrong relationship, because like you said, sometimes what is on the surface looks like it'll work. But when you dig a little deeper, the relationship doesn't have that solid foundation of the core values and of the total package that'll help it go the distance. And so I'm really concerned that people are oftentimes making that wrong choice in the first place. And so I'm sure you've been in that really difficult position where sometimes you have a couple that comes to you and you don't know. I'll put it this way. I believe if a couple wants to stay together, they absolutely can find a way. But if one is already checked out, and sometimes that member of the relationship is checked out 5 years before they even get to you, then I don't know that there's always the possibility to salvage the relationship, which I don't want to be. That sounds really negative, or that I'm painting a picture of despair. But at the same time, sometimes the right choice is to split. And that's hard. And so I admire what you do, because that's got to be a painful place to be sometimes, when a couple acknowledges, oh, wait, maybe we aren't going to go the distance, especially when there's kids involved and so many years of being together.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for voicing that. I think it's really important, and you're right. What I'm trying to do in my work when I work with couples is, as you said, that's one of the first questions that I ask is, what drew you together? Why did you decide to be together? And try to find the source of love, because I think often we forgot about why we got together, we were drawn to each other. But also I try to empower the couples and ask them the right question that they can see for themselves what's right, what's the right decision to take, whether it's staying in the marriage or whether it's living in the marriage. And I think it's a very personal question that they have to ask and answer. And what feels right? Do you feel that you can still grow with your partner, or do you feel like you reach a limit and you need something else? And I never advise any couple around that. They have to find their own answers.
Mhm.
I mean, I can share my own experience because I've been married 3 times and I've been divorced 3 times. I knew that the 3 times I reached a point where it didn't feel right for me to stay in the marriage. And when I look back at my relationship, I'm happy the way it ended. I mean, it has been tough. A breakup or ending a marriage, we never expect that, right? But for me, it felt right, and it still feels right today in my life. So I'm okay with that. I made peace with that. But thank you for voicing that. I think it's really important. So another question maybe that I can ask you is, what is the best advice you received regarding relationship? The best advice that someone gave you and you really took it like, oh my God, this is it.
Yeah, I mean, just regarding relationships in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, let's see, the best advice. It's funny because, you know, from your background too, as a coach or a therapist, people kind of assume that they'll go to a coach or therapist and get lots of advice, but we don't do much advice giving, right? And even when in my posts on Instagram, where I'm really, that's the platform I'm most active, I try to tell my story and let people extrapolate from it what they resonate with.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't try to tell people what to do. But what I will say, I guess the best advice I ever received that has become one of my life's mottos is to not settle, to never settle for anything that isn't extraordinary, as we spoke earlier. Because I see in this day and age where we really don't need each other in the way that we used to as a woman. So 50 years ago even, or certainly 100 years ago, my grandmother needed a man for financial support, for her place in society, to have a role. And that's not the case anymore. And I think the gender roles being kind of tossed up and mixed up can be freeing. It can be confusing too. I think sometimes men and women don't quite know where they fit anymore. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing about where we are in this day and age is that by not needing each other, there's more power. If my husband needs me because he needs a woman, because he's incapable of existing without a woman, then any woman will do. But because he wants me, there's power. I'm not replaceable. I'm irreplaceable. And the same is true for him with me. I didn't get married till I was 42, so I certainly could do adult life without a man. But I wanted him. And so he has security in knowing that not any other guy will do. It's got to be him. So that's that beautiful place that we're in. And so because we don't have to need each other the way in eras gone by, we can truly not settle for anything less than something really wonderful, which I think makes the strongest relationship. So I worry sometimes with people who get married too young because they haven't really done their own independent work to make themselves happy and realize that nothing makes you happy, not marriage, not a job, not money, nothing external makes you happy. You make you happy. So I worry that when people get together too young, they haven't done all that independent growth and development as an individual and learned the strength that they can bring, their independence. The stronger they are independently, the stronger they'll be as a couple. So that was a long way of saying never settle.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I can totally relate because when I married for the first time, I was 22. I met my first wife when I was 18. Absolutely. I was not ready. I didn't know who I was. And if you could see me at 18 or 22 and you see me right now, it's like totally different movies, totally different personality. So that's very important to remind that. And one thing that I want to talk about, I hear here and there on social media some conversation around, well, before you get into a relationship or any relationship, you need to do the work on yourself and you need to be happy with yourself. And I truly believe in that. I truly believe that the more powerful you feel in your life, the more personal power you have, the best ability you're going to have to navigate through a relationship and through any challenges that life will throw at you. But there is another school there that some people say that when you get into a relationship, even if you get triggered, even if you're not ready, right? going through the relationship and learning and being able to learn through the relationship can also be something like very powerful and valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a bit of a mix in the two. I think both ways are possible, but I would like your take on that.
Yes, I think that is a rhetoric or a message that you hear a lot. Mm-hmm. You have to fully love yourself and then true love will show up. And I resist any formulaic interpretations of how life goes because I don't believe that it's that simple. I think you can fully love yourself for quite a while, and timing is everything. You can love yourself 100%, and if the right person for you hasn't moved from across the country to move into your town, into your apartment building so that you guys bump into each other, it's not going to happen. So I don't like the sense that and singles hear this. It's like, well, you must not love yourself enough. And I don't think that that's always true. And the point that you're making as well is that even when we love ourselves appropriately and sufficiently, we still continue this journey of loving ourselves and knowing ourselves and intrapersonal introspection, trying to understand ourselves. And then we also learn very valuable lessons about ourselves through what we encounter in our relationships. So our partner holds up a mirror for us and we go, oh, that's something I hadn't fully understood about myself. So there's both and. So I guess ultimately, I believe both are important. I do encourage us to be very self-sufficient because, as I said earlier, I think it's the strongest place to come into a relationship. When we're self-sufficient, we don't stay in cruddy relationships because we're so dependent. We aren't afraid of being alone. And there's actually research out of the University of Toronto in 2013. They did an entire study about the fear of being single. And people who fear being single are more likely to stay in bad relationships, to become too dependent on their partner, and to not break up with someone who they know that they're not even that crazy about, or to even date someone they're not even attracted to. So we know that there's data to support that being so scared of being independent and alone is going to put us at risk for staying in a relationship that's not too good for us, or even getting into a relationship that's not good for us. But be that as it may, I don't think it's a formula for saying, oh, you people who are single, just hurry up and love yourself, and then true love will come your way.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you can voice that because, I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself. I'm 50 years old. I'm going to turn 51, right? I think it's a never-ending work that we do on ourselves, right? So even if I'm in a very good place in my life, for example, and I do love myself and I'm very compassionate with myself, from time to time, I find myself being harsh on me, or having doubts, or saying, hey, but the insight that I can get from that is I can recognize that. I can say, hey, here, when you think about that and when you have that kind of thoughts and when you do that, you're very harsh on yourself, Harry. So what's happening there? So I can recognize that, I can acknowledge that, and then I can slow down and maybe just be more in tune with myself to understand what's going on. Right?
Yes, and I'm very sorry about the scenery change, but my dog.
That's great.
My dog was in an emergency situation. I thought, gosh, this is not going to be very good if my dog has an accident. So yeah, but you talk about the messages that we tell ourselves and being harsh on ourselves, and that's something I actually just posted about this week. I do live events sometimes. I call them Modern Dating Mindset. I did one, started them last summer in London with Anne Arrett and Saskia Nelson, who you may be familiar with as well. And the story that we tell ourselves about our journey in relationships, and then the story that we tell ourselves and the messages that we continue to tell ourselves are so powerful. And we really, the theme of my podcast is take charge of your thoughts, take charge of your life. And it's so important to rein those in because they can be so damaging, more damaging than anything that anyone else has ever said or done to you are the voices in your own head at times.
Yeah, no, I totally relate with that and agree. Yeah, absolutely. So because you talk also a lot about dating in your work, and so what would be maybe an advice or strategy or something that you want to tell to a lot of people who are single today and they can't seem to find someone to live their life, and sometimes it can be a bit hopeless. But how can we empower them and how can we give them some hope that it can still be happening?
Yeah, it's a jungle out there. It's tough. I have a lot of people who are very frustrated. They, especially I think now with the apps, I think that's kind of changed the landscape in a way that even online didn't. Online dating still felt like a vehicle to meet a broader array of individuals. But with the apps, I think it's even just the gesture of the swiping. People feel that they're very disposable, that, oh, they feel like nice and she was kind and she was cute enough and funny enough, but maybe I'll go home and on my app I can meet someone just a little nicer, just a little funnier, just a little cuter. And so people are feeling very, like you said, hopeless. And I think really, again, it goes back to your mindset. If you allow the disappointments, and this is, just because, so my challenge was that, love didn't come easily for me. And then I had a calling off a wedding, and you've had marriages that haven't gone the distance. And these can all be very discouraging, but in other realms of life too, we have disappointments. And it's really, our job is really to dig deep, to figure out ways to stay hopeful. And I think that's different from different people. For me, I had to really start inundating. When I called off my wedding, it was like, oh my gosh, here I go again. And then I had another love affair that was for 2 years. My wedding, this one's it. And then that didn't work out. So then I'm in my late 30s, and with women, the clock is ticking and all these things. Mm-hmm. So I really had to just immerse myself in positive thinking. I had to reconnect with my faith. I had to go, you know what, if I'm going to believe in God and that God has my best in store for me, not what I think is best, but what he thinks is best, I really got to lock into that, because what's the point of having faith if you don't use it when you're struggling, right? So for me, it was twofold. So I really would immerse myself in positive messages. Like I said, I would get in the car and I would play CDs of motivational speakers like Joel Osteen or Tony Robbins, those sorts of speakers. So I just didn't want to let my mind stray to the negative. And I believe that whatever we're experiencing on the internal realm, people are sensing that. They're picking up on that energy. And then when I met my husband, he had just gone through a divorce, and he'd been married 23 years. And here I was, single girl, who'd been single for forever. And in some ways I thought, gosh, will we have anything in common? But what we did have in common that was very powerful, he had been through a very painful situation. Like you said, no one expects a divorce to happen. No one expects on their wedding day to think this isn't going to end up going on for forever. And I had had all these disappointments in love, and yet we remained happy, hopeful, positive, and that was our common ground. And that drew us to each other, because we weren't going to fall prey to those negative messages and get into that space where we became so hopeless that we gave up.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful. I think you talk about energy, and you talk about that people sense our energy. And I think it's really important to remind that to everyone who's listening today. We have an energy field. We are made of energy. And if inside ourselves we feel bad about ourselves, or we feel hopeless, or we feel negative, or we're judging ourselves, people don't need to know what's going on. They just feel that energetically. So you're going to attract people that they're going to be like in the same kind of level, and then it's not going to end up well, right? So one way that I always tell my clients and everyone that I meet is to raise your vibration. And one way to raise your vibration, raise your energy, is to do like a daily job. Like make sure that one of your daily job is to make you feel good. Do things that makes you feel good. Do things that makes you feel powerful. Do things that makes you feel joyful. That you can, so it can be like going on for a walk, going swimming, maybe going to yoga, or maybe reading a book, whatever you want, or just having a coffee with a friend, right? But make sure that's our daily job. And sometimes we forgot about that. And but if you can think and have the mindset that it's your job to do that. Sometimes we don't want to work. We wake up in the morning, but we still go to work because we have responsibility. One of your responsibilities is to take care of yourself. And to make sure that your energy is always vibrating at your higher best. And some days it's not going to happen, and that's okay. But the next day you can recommit, and you can still feel empowered. And I really love what you said also about the face, because when I was hearing what you said about the face, it's also like, for me, it's almost like a surrendering process. When you have faith, you can really surrender and just be and stop judging and stop, expecting things, but just be in that environment where you are in your life and just move forward. So thank you very much for sharing that.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about your job is to take care of yourself. And it's, gratitude is another piece too, because that helps you raise your vibration. Because when you want something so desperately, and it's okay to want love, sometimes I would feel all those years single, I thought, gosh, I should just be like, I'm a single lady and I'm strong and I got this. But deep down, I still wanted love so desperately. And I had to give myself permission to want that. And all my broken hearts, my broken heart so many times, it was a reflection of how desperately I wanted this powerful relationship. But I had to keep the gratitude for everything else that was wonderful in my life. I had to make sure that was in place, because that helped me, like you said, keep my vibration, so that when I walked into a room, I wanted to be full of light and love, because that's what I wanted to bring to me, right? So I had to make sure I was giving that. And again, I can't underscore enough, and I'm glad that you do as well in your work. You do, and you do attract what you're putting out there. And I'm so thankful that although many people, when they've been on the scene and had their heart broken so many times, they can become bitter and they can become jaded. But if you become bitter and jaded, you're going to attract someone really negative and kind of a crabby person to you. And I didn't want crabby in my life. So
yeah, absolutely. I totally relate with that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Karin, tell me one thing that you love to do outside of your work.
I love to play tennis. I love to ski. I love to sing and write songs, like you said. We're lucky in what we do, that our work is our joy as well. So my work doesn't feel like work. I'm sure you do too. There's so much, especially with social media. I'm able to know when I post something and someone will say, gosh, that's really what I needed to hear today.
Okay, so we had a breakout in the recording, so that's why Karin is now into another setup. But the last question that I asked was, what do you do when you don't work?
Yeah, so I love to play tennis. I love to ski. I like to boat. Just kind of read when I can. But as I was saying to you, it's really kind of nice because work doesn't feel like work. And so I just so enjoy even editing my podcast or, trying to reach out to someone to have on the show. It's very all-encompassing, but I feel very blessed and very grateful that I do a lot of work, but it doesn't feel like work.
That's great. That's beautiful. So Karin, tell us where, if people wants to reach out to you or have a talk with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so first of all, you can go to my website, which is drkarin.me, which is drkarin.me. But I'm most active is in terms of interacting with me on Instagram. So that's at Dr. Karin, at dr.karin. I'm also on Facebook a little bit, but not as much. And that's Dr. Karin Anderson Abrell. Abrell is A, B as in boy, R-E-L-L. And then I'm also on Twitter a little bit at Dr. Karin Anderson.
That's great. Thank you. Karin, thank you very much for being my guest today. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate all your insights and your authenticity. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, thanks again for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. So guys, it's time to wrap up the interview. I think you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that. And until next week, as I always say, don't forget, when you open your heart, you have all the love you need. So be well, seek for joy, and live in peace. Bye, everyone.